The Kremlin is again trying to turn responsibility for Russia's war against Ukraine upside down. Dmitry Peskov, Vladimir Putin's spokesman, claimed in comments to Russian state television that it was Ukraine's own authorities who had brought the country to catastrophe. According to him, the tragedy unfolding in Ukraine was allegedly created by Kyiv itself.
They plunged their own country into catastrophe. It was by their hands that the tragedy taking place there was created.
Peskov also spoke about possible negotiations on Ukraine. He said that a full-format dialogue could begin only after a ceasefire. But in the Kremlin's version, that ceasefire would require Ukraine's armed forces to withdraw from the territory of Donbas. So Russia is again presenting its own maximalist demands as a condition for talks. The Kremlin spokesman also accused Kyiv of using other countries for its own interests. Peskov accused Europe of effectively fighting Russia directly on Ukraine's side. According to the Kremlin, this makes Europe unfit to act as a mediator in any future talks.
They are now effectively taking part directly in the war on the side of the Kyiv regime, and are, rather, apologists for the idea of inflicting a crushing blow on Russia, a crushing defeat. Of course, with such an approach, they can hardly claim to be mediators.
And Russia once again hit Ukraine with a massive attack. For almost 2 days, with almost no pause, drones and missiles were flying at Ukrainian cities. Russia launched 1,567 drones and 56 missiles of various types. Kyiv was hit especially hard. A Russian strike tore through a residential apartment building, destroying part of it from the 1st to the 9th floor. 24 people were killed, including 3 children. 47 people were injured. Russia is not showing major victories on the battlefield. Moscow is holding poor, exhausted parade, but killing civilians. That is still Russia's method of war, low and shameful. There is no point in talking to Moscow just for the sake of talking. That is now the message coming from Europe. Lithuanian President Gitanas Nausėda says negotiations with Russia are possible only after the Kremlin shows at least a minimal willingness to stop the war. Not through words, not through another round of signals or diplomatic maneuvering, but through one concrete step, ending the fighting. According to Nausėda, he currently sees no possibility for contacts or negotiations with Vladimir Putin. Nausėda also reminded that attempts to negotiate with Russia in advance, without Moscow meeting even the most basic conditions, have failed many times before.
I do not see the possibility for such contacts or negotiations with Vladimir Putin at the moment. Such talks can begin only when Russia clearly demonstrates that it wants to end the war. There is a very simple way to do that. Stop the hostilities, achieve a ceasefire, and only then can something be discussed with the Kremlin regime.
German Chancellor Friedrich Merz has now joined Gitanas Nausėda in talking a tougher line. Berlin has made it clear that Moscow will not decide who speaks on behalf of Europeans. Across the EU, the response to Russia's attempts to dictate the terms for future negotiations is becoming increasingly firm. Let me remind you that Russian dictator earlier said he would prefer former German Chancellor Gerhard Schröder as Europe's negotiator in talks with Moscow.
We Europeans decide for ourselves who speaks on our behalf, no one else. Europe has the opportunity to help shape a new world order, one based on norms and rules, not arbitrariness and the law of the strongest.
Ukraine's army is now the strongest in Europe. That assessment came from U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio in an interview for Fox News. For years, Ukraine was often described in the West as a country that needed help to survive. Now its military is being described as a force others are learning from. Rubio said the war has forced Ukraine to adapt at extraordinary speed, especially in drones, robotics, new technologies, and battlefield innovation. In his words, Ukraine has created a new kind of hybrid asymmetric warfare.
Well, there's no doubt that the necessity of fighting this war has caused the Ukrainians to develop new tactics, new techniques, new equipment, new technology that is creating a sort of hybrid asymmetrical warfare. That's impressive, no doubt about it. I mean, if you look at the Russians are losing 5 times as many soldiers a month as the Ukrainians are. And the Ukraine is a smaller country and a smaller army for that matter. Although the Ukrainian armed forces are the strongest, most powerful armed forces in all of Europe, just to be clear, right now. Obviously because a lot of the assistance they've gotten, but also because of the battlefield experience that they've gained.
And U.S. forces are already using the battlefield experience Ukraine has gained in its war against Russia, especially when it comes to countering drones. That was stated by Admiral Brett Cooper, the commander of U.S. Central Command, during a Senate hearing. The main focus was the Middle East, the war with Iran, civilian casualties, and Hezbollah's role in the region. But senators also raised question of Ukraine, specifically how its experience in dealing with the massive drone attacks is now helping the United States and its partners.
The Ukrainians have developed to address counter-drone responses. Can you talk a little bit about what you're seeing with respect to that and whether our allies and partners find that kind of support helpful from the Ukrainians?
Senator, I think most significantly, we adopted a large number of tactics, techniques, and procedures that the Ukrainians have passed us that have helped us defend Americans. And all of our partners are working with Ukraine in some way, shape, or form. I'd really defer to them, let them talk about it. But are they more effective as a result? Yes.
Thank you.
2029 is the date now appearing more and more often in Europe's military assessments. According to German's top general Carsten Breuer, Russia could be ready to attack NATO by then. But the most alarming part of this warning is that Kremlin may not wait until 2029. Breuer gave a joint interview with a British counterpart, Richard Neaton. Both were not speaking about some distant theoretical threat, but about real military preparation. Russia is building up weapons, expanding its armed forces, reshaping its economy, and at the same time learning from its war against Ukraine. That is why, according to Breuer, NATO must be ready not at some point in the future, but now.
Various indicators, the buildup of weapons, an increase in personnel, economic and political developments, all converge on one point: 2029. Could it happen earlier? Yes. That is why, first, we need combat readiness tonight. Second, expanded capabilities by 2029. And third, technological superiority by 2035.
After Russia's massive attack on Ukraine, the Great Britain is speeding up deliveries of air defense systems and counter-drone equipment. UK Defense Secretary John Healey called the latest Russian strikes on Ukrainian cities shocking and said London would accelerate the transfer of systems that can help protect Ukraine's skies. This is not only about traditional air defense. Counter-drone systems are becoming just as critical as Russia increasingly tries to exhaust Ukraine's defenses with a massive waves of drones.
I have directed that UK deliveries of air defense and counter-drone systems be accelerated as fast as possible. We stand shoulder to shoulder with Ukraine in the face of Putin's aggression. Our thoughts are with Ukrainian families.
Service members of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, the National Guard, and the State Border Guard Service have returned from Russian captivity. This is the first stage of a larger 1,000 for 1,000 prisoner exchange. Among those released are privates, sergeants, and officers. Most of them had been held in Russian captivity since 2022. They defended Ukraine in Mariupol and at Azovstal. They also fought on the Donetsk, Luhansk, Kharkiv, Kherson, Zaporizhia, Sumy, and Kyiv fronts, as well as at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. These are people who went through war captivity and years of waiting, and now they are finally home.
205 Ukrainians are home. Today, service members of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, the National Guard, and the State Border Guard Service are returning from Russian captivity. This is the first stage of the 1,000 for 1,000 exchange. Among those released are privates, sergeants, and officers. Most of them had been in Russian captivity since 2022. They defended Ukraine in Mariupol and at Azovstal, on the Donetsk, Luhansk, Kharkiv, Kherson, Zaporizhia, Sumy, and Kyiv fronts, and at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant.
The Kremlin may already be looking for a way out of the war, but only in a form that Putin can sell to Russians as a victory. That is the assessment of Weiss, the political representative of the Russian Volunteer Corps, in an interview with The Telegraph. According to him, Ukraine was an irrational goal for Putin from the very beginning, shaped not by military logic or Russia's real interest, but by Putin's distorted understanding of history.
I think Ukraine was an irrational goal for Putin from the very beginning, formed by the wrong understanding of history in his head. Putin killed Alexei Navalny in prison. Why? Most likely, his left heel simply started itching, and he decided to kill his political opponent, over whom he had full power. I think it is the same story with Ukraine, and now he is simply looking for options that would allow him to present this war as a victory.
John Bolton says Donald Trump still believes the conspiracy theory that Ukraine worked against him during the 2016 election campaign and supported Hillary Clinton. According to Bolton, Trump seriously believes that Hillary Clinton's computer server may be somewhere in Ukraine, and he wants to find it. The point, Bolton argues, is that Trump's attitude toward Ukraine has long been shaped not only by geopolitics, but also by personal grievance and political obsession, from the 2019 phone call with Zelensky to his current reluctance to fully back Kyiv.
Well, as I said, this is a matter of personal relations. And Trump believes that Ukraine worked against him in the 2016 campaign, and that Hillary Clinton's computer server, is somewhere in Ukraine, and he wants it. And he's serious. He wants that server, which would prove it. Zelensky hasn't produced the server. It resulted in cutoff of U.S. security assistance in 2018 for a time. That's how Trump sees things. His analysis of Ukraine is not what's in America's national security interest. It's about that problem. And Putin has played on that repeatedly.
That's all for now. Thank you for watching.